This is Stephen Wikoski from Christian Music Network, and I'm here with 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 Mark J. Young. So how are you doing?
Oh, still working on what am I doing?
Okay, there you go. There you go. There, there you go.
And you?
So, oh, good, great, great.
Good.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, so tell me about yourself.
Oh dear. Um, I I've come to the point in life where I'm uh, I'm now a grandfather, and in fact, earlier tonight, my 2.5 year old granddaughter decided to pull my laptop on the floor 3 times while we were
Oh
out of the
no,
room.
boy.
This is a fascinating toy for her,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, definitely.
but she got spanked the third time. Hopefully, she won't do it again.
Okay,
Uh,
good.
but I I I always expected that my career would be in Christian music, and it kind of got sidetracked, and I became a writer and a the chaplain of the Christian Gamers Guild,
Cool.
and really that has occupied much more of my ministry than the music has.
Okay.
But the music is still like this is the thing I started with.
Sure. 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 Definitely. Definitely. Okay. So, yeah. Yeah, you have a song called Holocaust. Tell me about that.
Well, uh, we had a friend over, and I played a chord, and he started singing, and together, he and I and my wife put together this song, and it's an extremely poetic song. Has lots of imagery, lots of metaphor.
Sure.
Uh, it It's a little bit about the Holocaust of World War II, but it uses it as an analogy for the Holocaust of abortion today.
Sure.
And I like it. My youngest son loves it. In fact, I think he was in third grade when he wrote the entire poem at the end on a piece of paper, and his teacher saw it and said, "Did you write this?" And he had to admit that actually he learned it from his father. But it's well, I gather you're going to play it,
Okay.
so let's let people hear it, and then we can comment on it afterwards.
Actually, I have links to your song, so they can
Oh, you're going to splice it in later.
listen to it later. Yep. So yeah. So yep. So yeah. And then you have the song. That's what I. That's when I'll.
Believe.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was in college, and when uh, trying to wrap my you kind of jumped on to this one. I was just listening to this one. Um, Someone has said that people uh, don't believe for lack of evidence. They don't. They decide what they're going to believe, and they interpret the evidence by that. And that's when I'll believe uh, takes that, and it starts with a guy who says, "Well, they they say that I should live a decent moral life if I want to get to heaven, but I I don't believe there is any such thing. And when people die, and if I hear of someone coming back to life, that's when I'll believe." And then the second verse is, they tell me that this Jesus guy came back to life, but I didn't see it. When I have proof that he came back to life,
Mm.
that's when I'll believe.
Yep.
And then it goes to talking about Jesus returning, and it says they say he's going to come back. Well, when I see him, that's when I'll believe. And it ends up with when I am in the fire.
Mm.
That's when I'll believe. I
Yep.
I'm not going to, and and you know that in fact he's not going to believe.
Right. Exactly.
He's never going to believe
Oh.
because
Oh.
he's made up his mind.
Yep.
That he,
Yep. Exactly. Yep. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Made up his mind a long time ago. You
yeah,
know. Yep. Yep.
and it doesn't matter what evidence you show him.
Exactly.
Evidence doesn't matter if he's made up his mind.
Yep.
It,
Yep.
in C.S. Lewis's book Miracles, a preliminary study, he tells the story of a woman that he knows who saw a ghost.
Mm.
And she didn't believe in ghosts before she saw it.
Okay.
And she didn't believe in ghosts after she saw it.
Right. Yeah.
And she's constantly looking for a rational explanation for why it is that she thought she saw a ghost.
Mm.
And it shows us that seeing is not necessarily believing.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm reminded about the Lazarus and the rich man. You know. That they that that when the rich man was in the fire, he tells God that about my brothers, you know, and
yeah,
but God says, if I they won't believe, you know,
if they don't believe Moses and the prophets, they won't believe even if someone rises from the dead. And
exactly.
and then Jesus did that,
Yep,
and
they
they
did
didn't
that.
believe.
Exactly, exactly. Yes, yes, definitely, definitely, definitely. And then you have the song "Convinced." So tell me about that.
Oh, yeah. I had written a lot of songs, what I called songs of doubts. You mentioned one of them. That's when I'll believe. Uh, Songs that expressed uh, uncertainty, questions whether God was real, and I just felt that I should put together something positive, something affirmative, and it came at a time of my I was at the time I was working at the Christian radio station WNNN. Was really a very small radio station, but was considered one of the top contemporary Christian music stations in the country.
Wow.
Um, yeah, that was back in like the end of the 1970s, beginning of the 1980s, when there weren't a lot of contemporary Christian
Yeah.
music
Wow.
stations in the country.
Cool. Definitely.
But God apparently had sent me there, and
Okay.
uh, I could see God working, and I was like, uh, God is there. He is meeting needs. He is doing what needs to be done, and it says, uh, I am convinced. I You said things, and I doubted them, and now I'm persuaded. I uh, I see what you have done, and you have persuaded me.
Yep. Praise
Uh,
God.
so,
Great. 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 Yeah. So you've been in various different bands, and your last one was called Collision. So tell me about that.
oh well, that lasted quite a few years and went through a lot of changes in personnel. I suppose what happened was uh, I was in a band called 7DB, uh, and uh, we rehearsed at the home of local pastor's son, who was guitarist, vocalist, and then one day he said, "I don't really want to be in a band,"
Okay.
and the name 7DB was kind of because the band was associated with his church, which was a Seventh Day Baptist church,
Okay.
and uh, and we liked the connection between the audio idea of 7DB and the Seventh
Sure.
Day Baptist. But the lead guitarist and I went on and said, well, let's, we're not giving up on this. We're going to need a new name. Uh, and at the time, Skillet's album Collide was out, and
Yeah.
we liked the concept of the collision of worlds. In fact, the one album that Collision put out was called Of Worlds,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and as a kind of an anecdote, the drummer got this got this emblem made up for the head of his bass drum. You know how they do that, and it was a picture of the earth crashing into the cross and being destroyed.
Okay.
And we were practicing in a different church, and he left his drum set up, and the youth pastor complained to the pastor and said, I mean, look at that picture. And the pastor was like, what are you complaining about? That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
That really is it. The world crashing into the cross and being destroyed.
Yeah.
And so eventually we picked up the keyboard player and a drummer. Uh, it was me, Eric Kyle Baxter on lead guitar, Jonathan Manis on keyboards, and Nick. Oh, geez, I can't remember. Nick Rhodes was the drummer, and uh, we played quite a bit, mostly in Cumberland County. Uh, the the I can't remember the name, what the name used to be. It was uh, uh, they sold the place and now it's Dragon something or other. But it's a little shopping village south of Bridgeton, and they had several concerts there that we played at. We played at Millville Day. Uh, we played at a number of church functions for different things, and we made this album, 9 songs, I think 9, uh, and the that's when I'll believe that you already played was one of the cuts from that album.
Cool.
Um, and we uh, we broke up mostly because Kyle went into the Navy, and then uh, Nick was having health problems, and Jonathan wanted to go play with his church. So that kind of left me. And at the time I was playing bass guitar and singing. So
Right. Yeah.
was
Mm.
I, I I don't know whether I can rebuild this band. Lord, what are we doing next?
Mm.
And I've done a few solo concerts since, but that was pretty much the last time.
Okay. Cool.
Uh, I,
Yeah. 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 So if somebody would ask you to play, would you play?
Probably. I have some health issues that make it difficult for me to commit to things, but uh, I do get out and play sometimes, and if it wasn't too far and I didn't get too sick, I would certainly say yes, I will come. Bring my guitar. Nice if there's a piano there, but not necessary.
Okay, cool. 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 So, where can we get your music?
Oh, wow. If you go to my website, mjyoung.net,
Mm,
uh, it's there's quite a bit of it on the weblog. I'm gonna have to figure. I was just thinking the other day I had to find a way to make that more readily accessible because as it stands now, people ask me for links to the music and I send them, um, which isn't a bad way to do it. I mean, you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Twitter.
sure.
Uh, I have my own uh, Patreon account, um, and I'm on several others of social media. I'm on Goodreads because I'm an author. The background there is one of my recent books, Why I Believe.
Oh,
Uh, and and if you drop me a note and say, how do I find your music? I will send you the links. But I'm going to have to find a way to make that more accessible for people. Uh, I I'm thinking of a way to do that, but it's going to take me a little bit to get to it.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I did find links, that yeah, from the Bible, and you have your music on there. So, they have the one called collision and the ones called music. So people can do that as well.
yes, they can. They if they get to if they get to mjyoung.net, there are ways to find the music. It's just I remember Nick, the drummer, complaining that the site was just so vast,
Right. Yeah.
and it is because it's got all kinds of stuff about time travel, stuff about role playing games, uh, stuff about Bible, stuff about music.
Mm,
Um,
yep. 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 So how can we contact you?
uh, well, you can write to mjyoung at mjyoung.net.
Okay.
Let
Oh,
me repeat that slowly. mjyoung at mjyoung.net.
okay,
That's
awesome.
easy to remember.
Yep. Sure. 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 So tell me about your books that you written.
Um, well, I guess it's hard to say how it started. I was when I was at the radio station back in the early '80s. We had a newsletter, and I was editor and wrote most of what was going on there. And
Oh,
the uh, the local newspaper, the Elmer Times, was our printer, and their associate editor suggested that I write some articles for them, which I did.
okay.
And then a few years later, I was uh, invited by a guy I knew to help him write a role playing game. He'd
Okay.
been working on for 5 years and wasn't really getting anywhere. Uh, so over the next 5 years, I put together a multiverser, uh, working with him, multiverser the game, and a
You got a friend there behind you. So,
hi. This is my fourth son, Evan, who apparently did not
hey,
get the
Evan.
message that I was be recording a podcast during this hour. Okay, good.
Yeah.
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 I,
All right. Yeah. So, got a buddy there. Cool.
I I wondered who was sneaking in the door.
There we go.
Yeah, he doesn't live here. He just picks up his mail.
Oh, okay.
uh,
Interesting.
the the but after I had published a couple of books in that and a novel uh, called Verse 3, Chapter 1, I wrote this little book. It was a, yeah, where, there we can't find a way to put it where it'll be seen. There we go. Yeah, it doesn't want to, camera doesn't want to pick it up. It's called What Does God Expect?
Okay, cool.
A gospel-based approach to Christian conduct.
Okay.
And it was kind of my answer. I'm sure that you have seen all these little booklets that they try to give to new Christians saying, this is how you have to act now.
Right, yeah.
And that's entirely wrong. That has nothing to do with the gospel. That has nothing to do with grace. And so what does God expect explains how do you live the Christian life without any rules. Because it's not about rules.
Exactly.
It's about love. It's about following God.
Yep. Relationship with Christ. Yep. It's all about Jesus.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I was sort of compelled to write it. God was like, write that book. And then my wife knew that I had this web page about the fruit of the Spirit, and I often talked about it. And she said, you should turn it into a book. So that became this, which once again, I can't get the book cover to appear. Yeah. But it's called About the Fruit.
Okay.
And it takes the fruit of the Spirit, and it shows how it's all one thing, expressing itself in different ways, and how we walk in the Spirit. And it's a short book. I mean, it's only 85 pages, and that includes an appendix talking about how the Jerusalem Council and the book and the letter to Galatia relate to each other. And then I had this idea that I had been thinking about the tension between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And we all think that it used to be that God expected you to keep all the laws, keep the law perfectly if you wanted to be saved, and then he changed it with the New Testament. And as I looked, and if you read Hebrews 11, the author there says that's not true. It has always been about faith. He goes all the way back to Cain and Abel, and talks about how salvation was always based on faith. And I wrote this, do you trust me? Well, almost got it in there.
Yeah.
And went through and showed how faith was always the way of salvation. It was never about law. It wasn't about law for Abel. It wasn't about law for Abraham. It wasn't about law for Moses.
Yeah.
And it goes through and talks about trusting God and how that is and always has been the way to come to God was simply by trusting Him.
Right. Yeah. Explains it in Hebrews. The faith chapter. Yep. It's always been about a relationship with God.
Absolutely. I'm not sure. I guess I should mention this one next because, in the late 90s, when I first got online, I got an invitation to join a group called the Christian Gamers Guild. And I'm like, I'm not a joiner. I'm not going to join that. And then I got a note from somebody who was playing my game who said that somebody on the Christian Gamers Guild was saying I'd plagiarized it. So I joined the Christian Gamers Guild to answer those issues. And by the time they got me cleared as a member, it had already been resolved. So I then got asked to sit on the board and then was asked to be the chaplain until they could hold elections. And every 2 years since then, they have been re-electing me to be the chaplain of
Okay.
this international organization.
Cool.
And along the way, I started writing a series called Faith and Gaming
Mhm.
about how our faith and our leisure play uh, are integrated. And eventually it was made into a book, and eventually the book was expanded and reprinted. This is the expanded edition. Yeah, no, you can't see it.
Yeah.
uh, but it's called Faith and Gaming Expanded Edition. Um, and it's a collection of articles that were originally published on the web uh, that are about uh, games, generally role playing games in particular, and how they relate to our Christian faith and how we as Christians relate to them. Uh, then and there is a sequel because more recently I was prevailed upon to start a new series called Faith in Play,
Okay.
which which is much the same thing, picking up where the old one left off. And after it had been running for 5 years, the my publisher said, "Let's put those in a book."
Cool.
So, so we did. Um, and then my relationship with my publisher is kind of interesting because somebody dropped me a note and said, "I know a guy who runs a publishing company, and he wants you to write a book about time travel for him."
Okay. Interesting.
Well, I had a huge time travel website that's very popular,
Sure.
and I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but let me try it. And I contacted him and said, all right, I'm going to try to do this, but I want you to publish a book that I have been now working on for almost 20 years. And if I write it one more time, that's just going to be stupid. It's the one you see the back cover of. You probably can't see it here either.
Oh,
No, yeah, there we
okay.
go. Why I Believe.
Okay.
Uh,
Cool.
and it is a concise but comprehensive approach to what we call apologetics, the evidence for the existence of God and for the gospel of Christ. Uh, and it's done in, I, I passed the Mensa qualifying tests and joined Mensa back decades ago. I'm not a member now because I don't really see any point to it, but uh, it kind of qualifies me as one of those super intelligent people. And when when you talk to people who are of above average intelligence, they often think that if you're smart enough, you won't believe in God
Mm.
because smart people don't believe in God. But I have a quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson said, when you get to the smartest scientists in the world, a substantial number of them believe in God. And that's a data point.
Mm.
People who are smart do believe in God. And I say, and this book will try to explain why
Sure. Cool.
intelligent people believe in God. This is not something that only stupid people believe. This is something that very intelligent people can believe. They have throughout history, and uh, they do today. Um, uh, and I have started publishing a series of commentaries on the New Testament. It's a kind of a big book here,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
this is an analytical commentary of the book of Romans,
Cool.
and it it's a very thorough and complete book. Uh, it's almost 700 pages, and goes through the book chapter by chapter, verse by verse,
Awesome.
word by word, analyzing what Paul was actually saying.
Right.
And
Yes.
I I I have Corinthians in the works,
Oh,
and I have text written for most of the rest of the New Testament, and I have to do a lot of editing and formatting to get them out. But the publisher is looking forward to putting them into print,
cool.
and so hopefully we will continue to see more of those. I've got other things. I've got novels that I publish online, and the publisher who published the game originally is now looking at trying to get those novels into print, uh,
Wow.
and I and and put the game back into print because it's been out of print for quite a long time. Uh, but it's uh, it's been kind of a surprise because I when I was in college, I thought I was going to be a Christian recording artist touring the country and singing music.
Mhm.
And uh, mostly because I needed something to fill a spot in my schedule, I took a course in creative writing fiction.
Mhm.
And I didn't really, I mean, I thought, well, maybe one day I would write the next great Christian fantasy novel, but
Great.
I didn't really take it seriously.
Mhm.
And that has been the class that has been most on point for my life since then.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So you were listening to those songs. I guess, I mean, I sent you a, a longer list of songs, and
Yes.
you picked those. I guess those were the ones you liked, or either that
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah, yeah. They sound really interesting. So, yeah. So, yep,
did,
yep, yep, yep.
did you have a favorite?
Uh, uh, um, I also like Free. So tell me about Free.
Oh, okay. Well, uh, it I was at college and I had heard someone talk about this guy who played the guitar and sang and how good he was. And then I heard that he was playing on campus. So I went to hear him. He was just another student, but he had this really frenetic style where he was changing chords like almost every word,
Hmm.
a couple of chords a second as he sang.
Okay.
And, uh, one thing that I do sometimes when I'm listening to music is I say, "Have I ever written anything like that?"
Hmm.
And I had never written anything remotely like that. Uh, so I went back to my dormitory and I threw some chords together and started playing them. And I wrote Free,
Hmm.
and it just flew across the the fretboard.
Sure.
Uh, and and then the next day, I went to his dorm and found him and said, "I got to play this for you. You inspired this." And he said, and he loved it. And he said, "I really love those words. He has raised me from the dead."
Hmm.
Uh, and the it's an exciting song. It's I suppose it's a showy song. You play it and people are impressed.
Sure.
Uh, we recorded it with Collision, which is probably the recording you have. And I must confess that uh, I was unable to get through it in one take playing the bass and singing. There
Okay.
was just too much going on for me to be able to do it. So it's I think it's the only song on which we recorded the instruments and I went back and sang the vocals over it.
Okay.
Uh, we did something like that on That's When I'll Believe
Okay.
because I had Eric take his 12-string acoustic and go into the studio and just play the first verse.
Mm,
And then we all went into the studio and he got his electric guitar and they played back the acoustic for the first verse and I sang over it and then we all came in and did the rest of the song. Oh, and I went back and dubbed the brass in on the keyboard uh, because in concert we were supposed to have two keyboards so that Jonathan could play the brass on the other one, but we didn't have two keyboards in the studio.
okay.
So I just dubbed the brass in after we were done. But otherwise, everything on that album was just straight take. We played
Great.
it, sang it, and
Awesome. Awesome. So what's ahead for you?
wow, good question. Um, Obviously, I'm still writing books. Uh, I have I am collaborating with someone on the Multiverser novels now, and we are working on the 14th novel in the series.
Mm,
Uh, I am doing the Corinthian commentaries, uh, and I never know when God is going to say, "Here, write something about this." I continue writing for the Christian Gamers Guild, both the Faith in Play articles and another series called RPGology, which is much more aimed at gamers without a solid Christian connection.
mm.
Um, I, uh, I don't really. Oh, and they want me to get Multiverser back in print, so I'm gonna
Cool.
try the role playing game.
Okay. Cool.
So I gotta that may make a difference when because I mean back in 97, 98 when it first came out, uh, people didn't really think much of it, and uh, now there are people saying, "How do I get a hold of this? Where can I get a copy?"
Sure. Sure.
So hopefully that will happen.
Yeah. 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 I'll, I guess been maybe about a year. I've been seeing a lot more Christian games popping up, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I I don't know how many of them are really Christian games, but I write about that in the uh, the web series.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, um, a lot of games, a lot of games think that if they have Bible verses in them, uh, or they're about Jesus or something, that makes them Christian games, and it doesn't really make them Christian games. It makes them games that appeal to Christians.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
the uh, a Christian game should there should be something Christian about the way it's played.
Sure.
I have a friend who wrote a role playing game called Legends of Valyria, and one of the core rules of the game is do to the other players what you would like them to do to you.
Mm, right.
I said this is a Christian principle built into a game,
Right.
uh,
Cool.
and Christian games that claim to be Christian frequently aren't really different from any other game
Mm,
except for the veneer.
right.
Uh, and but there are a lot of Christians out there trying to make games,
Right.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
and some of them are well thought out and some of them aren't. But that's true with anybody who tries to make a game, right?
Right. Yeah. Definitely. 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 I was just surprised. I was like, wow. You know.
Yes. Well, when I was a teenager, the Jesus movement was just getting started. And it was almost impossible to get Christian music on the radio
Mm, mm,
because radio stations thought nobody would listen to it.
sure.
Even when I was at WNNN, we had a management uh, who thought that we shouldn't be playing the contemporary Christian music because Christians didn't listen to music like that. We should be playing hymns and Southern gospel things that old people liked
Mm,
because only old people were Christians.
mm,
And
wow.
only old people listen to Christian radio, and we knew that was wrong. We knew that was didn't describe our audience at all,
Yeah.
but it took a lot to persuade them. And
Wow.
now now we have a massive Christian consumer market,
Sure.
and part of that is because of the Jesus movement.
Definitely.
uh, the I remember hearing Dr. J. Edwin Orr comment about revivals, that they were God's recruitment time.
Hmm.
And as I look, I mean, I mentioned that fellow who played the wild and crazy song. His name is Conrad Gempf, although I guess it's Reverend Conrad Gempf.
Okay.
And I know lots of people who were right about my age, came out of high school, went into college, who went into the ministry one
Hmm.
way or another
Okay.
because of that revival.
Sure.
And that revival swept in lots of people who are now in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, who are major targets for advertisers. So, of course, that's going to mean there's a Christian market. There's going to be people trying to sell things that Christians want, which
Hmm.
isn't all bad. I mean, it's good to have things out there that we want to buy.
Sure. Definitely.
I don't like the idea that we're a demographic that they have to market to.
Right.
They
Yeah.
won't
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I remember the preacher saying that advertising is about trying to get you to buy things you don't want, don't need, and can't afford. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but there are things we do want and do need and can afford.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's good that these are being provided. And books, games, uh, television shows, music, radio stations. I It actually kind of annoys me that when I tune into any of the Christian radio stations locally, the that my digital radio tells me the format is adult hits,
Mm.
and it's like this should say contemporary Christian music.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't. It says adult hits, and
Mm.
uh,
Interesting.
I don't know whether that's on the part of the radio stations themselves, trying not to discourage listeners who aren't believers,
Mm.
uh, or whether that's a whether that's something that the FCC says pick one of these categories, or something like that. But there there is that aspect that we are a target market, and we now have our own Christian radio stations.
Yep. Sure. Yep. Yep. Yeah. 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 And Christian music is played a lot these days. You know.
Yes,
Yeah. More than ever before. which is
Indeed.
amazing.
Indeed.
No, praise
Uh,
God. So, yeah,
Amen.
man. So, what advice do you have for other mu mu musicians?
Oh, um, I'm I was a DJ and program director for a contemporary Christian radio station back in the early '80s, and
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of what I know, and sometime in the late '80s, I got completely cut off from the Christian music scene, and didn't hear anything until the early aughts when we got a Christian radio station back in the area, uh, and I I had to go digging to find people like Audio Adrenaline I really liked. But I'm listening now, and there are a number of people who impressed me. One band, the band Kane, I keep thinking they're like the new version of Second Chapter of Acts, a brother and two sisters
Well,
who do this music singing together.
sure.
They're very tight. They have interesting ideas for their songs. Uh, I I'm very impressed by them. I mean, I could name a lot of others, but most of the ones that I would name are probably already really well known, like for King and Country, Casting
Mm-hmm.
Crowns. They're tight. They do good music. The Newsboys,
Mm-hmm.
uh, they they're all very impressive. And I don't want to leave people out, but I am very much a uh, a listener um, to bands.
Mm-hmm.
I I like the intricacy, although I will say that Toby Mac impresses me.
Yep, definitely, definitely, definitely.
Uh, I, there are a number of his songs that I have heard that I say, "Oh, that's really good." That you know, I would put that on my playlist.
Awesome,
uh,
awesome, awesome. So, but do you have any advice for musicians?
oh, yeah, don't quit your day job. Uh, this is this is a very strange profession because I would have to say that almost certainly God picks the people he wants to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not the people that we expect, and they're not the people who expect to succeed.
Sure.
They're just uh, people God picked. I mean, uh, somebody once said to me, "You were the best musician that I ever knew. Why weren't you successful?"
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have an answer, but the answer is that's not what God wanted me to do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not where God wanted to send me. Uh, and the other side of that is if God does put you into Christian music, expect it to be very difficult. I mean, one of the things when I was a teenager, even before I was doing Christian music, I was doing, rock music and writing my own music. It was like, yeah, being a musician, that's the easy life. You go around, you just go places and sing, and go
Sure.
someplace else and sing, and it's not easy.
No,
Uh,
no, definitely not.
uh, Larry Norman used to complain about how hard it was uh, being on the road,
Sure.
and uh, I I got an album. I got albums on vinyl. I got to get a record player so I can listen to them again. But an album by James Ward,
Mm-hmm.
which has several songs on it about being on the road and how difficult it is.
Sure.
Uh, um, and uh, the uh, I think it was Mercy Me recently did a song about um, how do I stand here and give these people hope when I feel as bad as I do right now.
Mm,
Uh, and that reflects the same thing. Being a Christian musician is hard work.
sure, definitely.
It's not an easy road,
Yeah.
and you should expect it to be difficult. I remember, uh, well, decades ago, I was in a band called Jacob's Well with a young guitarist named Bob Prokopowitz, who had written a couple of our songs that were very upbeat, and with a friend of mine who'd been with me in a previous band, who commented, "You can tell that he's a young Christian because it's like one of the lines in one of the songs was, Jesus, he can save you, he can make your problems fade away from you." And so
Mm,
that's and like, this is not really how it works.
yeah,
And
definitely.
when Mandisa first broke into Christian radio, it's like all of her early songs were all about how everything was wonderful, everything was positive, God was just doing everything good, and I think He was in her life at that point. And I was like, I feel sorry for you, girl, because you're going to learn.
Yep, yeah, definitely.
And then she came out with a song that said, I'm the one who always said how everything was positive, and I'm here to tell you that it isn't always. And God got
Mm,
a lot of work to do. It's not always easy. Uh, and I said, yes, you learned it. It came to you.
mm,
Uh, so uh, the you you have to expect that it's going to be difficult, and it's. I'm sure that it is wonderfully rewarding, but it's also a struggle.
sure. Yeah, definitely. Mm,
And I would say, don't do the music because you want to be a successful musician. Do the music because you have something to say and you want to say it.
yep, yep, certainly. Yep, yep. That's good advice. No, yeah, so, yeah, yeah, so. Yeah, I'd like to thank you for coming on. It was my pleasure. Any last words?
Only that I hope you'll drop me a note as soon as this is edited and posted so I can watch it.
Sure. Okay. Well, that'll be soon. So,
Okay.
yep. Yeah.
Uh,
So, yep. And
uh, Thank you for having me.
yep. Yep.
And maybe we'll do it again sometime in a year, or maybe do some more songs.
Sure. Definitely. Definitely. And God bless you and good night. And I guess we'll be looking forward to more books when you
Yes.
have them out. So, yep.
Yeah, I have a novella that
Cool.
has is supposed to be here. It is available on Amazon, but they haven't gotten
Okay.
it to me yet, so I haven't seen it.
Oh, okay. Okay. So your books are on Amazon
Yes,
and other places.
yes,
So,
and if you go to my website mjyoung.net,
yeah.
there's a link for the books to show you what all is in print and how to get them.
Cool. Great. 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 Well, God bless you and good night.
Thank you.